Thank you, Mark. And a big hello from London. A somewhat quieter and in some cases uninspiring week, though we have had some very interesting follow-on moves this week. They can also seemingly be split into just a few categories. In the currencies, we had weekly key reversals up last week in US dollar against the Swiss franc and euro against the yen. We also had weekly key reversals down last week in US dollar, Israeli shekel and Japanese yen against the Chinese yuan. None of these have seen any dramatic follow-on moves this week, and most have just stayed close to last Friday's close and also within last week's range. Moving on to the financials, we had weekly key reversals up last week in the French CAC40 futures, which have seen a small follow-on higher this week. In the NASDAQ 100 index, which has also seen a small follow-on higher, but a significant one with prices moving up over the key 50% Fibonacci line for the whole of 2025 at 19,383, though we have yet to see the market stabilizing over this important level. In the NASDAQ Composite Index, where we have seen a follow-on higher, closing right on the 2025 50% Fibonacci line at 17,450, but not really piercing the 50% Fibonacci line from the all-time high that was seen back in December last year, down to the recent low. In the important E-mini S&P futures, where prices had a small follow-on higher and are starting to establish themselves over the 50% Fibonacci line for 2025 at 5,500, but they have some pretty significant resistance nearby from the pink middle time, currently at 56.31, of the October 23 to February 25 move, the bullish Andrews pitchfork, as well as the important 38.2% Fibonacci line of the January 24 to February 25 move at 56.07. In the PHLX semiconductor index, which has barely moved away from Friday's close and still sits within last week's range, and the Russell 2000 index, which has seen a small follow-on higher but is far from recovering half of its drop this year, or from the high seen back in November last year. In the commodities, there are only a couple of weekly key reversals seen in the markets that I cover. We had a weekly key reversal down in the CME COMEX Lithium futures, if only just, which this week we have seen a follow-on lower, but barely. Finally, we had a weekly key reversal up last week in Winnipeg Canola futures, right at the top of the market. This week we have seen one small attempt higher, but prices have pulled back within last week's range, around midway there. As always, I'm happy to answer any direct questions if anyone is interested. With that, I'll finish this section from London and hope that you found these comments useful. Thank you for listening and watching this broadcast. This weekly broadcast gives the essential market patterns and consequences. Please be aware of the risk disclaimer posted both at the front and at the back of this broadcast. The copyright is Eddie Tofpik and ADM Investor Services International Limited. And here comes the final important bit.